Right, folks, back for part two of the 11K Q&A special. Some good questions here. Before we get into it, thank you for all the kudos on the part one. Yeah, it's nice to know that it's appreciated. So as I say, these types of videos, they don't always do that well on the algorithm. You can look at the likes on that one compared to some of the drama videos that I've made recently, and this is very different. But I like doing them because I know you appreciate them. So all good. Let's get this one in before the weekend, give you guys something to sink your teeth into, and we'll take it from there. So, first question. First question is from Abu Hassan 515, opinion on increasing volume as you get more advanced. So, great question because it highlights a very common misconception which I've heard over the last 10 years, I think. This is a very new idea, by the way. The idea that as you get more advanced, you need to increase your volume. It's a very new idea. And we're talking the last 10, 15 years. Traditionally speaking, this has not been the case. In lifting circles, this has not been the case. In sports, it is. Because generally sports have more of a cardiovascular and skill element. There is very little cardiovascular and skill element in lifting weights. So traditionally speaking, as you get more advanced, you were doing less. But I want to just explain how these people that started to say this came to that conclusion. What they were doing, and in coming to that conclusion, what did they actually miss? And then I'll explain what the correct procedure is. So basically what they were saying is this. They were saying that as you get more advanced, you need more stimulus. So the basic analogy was this. It's like any adaptation. Let's take tanning, okay? If you go out in the sun for 20 minutes a day, you're going to get something. I need some myself. And if you want to exceed that, if you want to get more of a tan, you either go out more often or you go out for a longer duration. And so the idea is when you're very, very tan, very, very dark, then you need even more exposure to continue to see adaptations. Same with training. That was what they were basing it on. They were basing it on the idea that you need a certain amount of stimulus to grow in this case, and then when you're at the advanced level you need more and more and more stimulus to continue to grow. That was the basic outline of what they believed. The problem was they ignored a number of things which led them to that conclusion, which actually caused a lot of dangerous overtraining. Because listen, a lot of the high volume stuff, it's not dangerous for beginners and intermediates. It's a waste of time, but it's not dangerous. But when you're an advanced guy, there are certain dangers because you know how to push yourself. And if you do push yourself with heavier weights and potentially higher frequencies, well, guaranteed injury. Now, in terms of where they went wrong, they misinterpreted the idea of how to get more stimulus as you get more advanced. As you get more advanced, you are also dramatically increasing the weight on the bar. So your volume when you're advanced is nothing like your volume when you're a beginner. You're a beginner, you go to the gym, you bench a bar, 45 pounds, 20 kilos. Now, when you're advanced, you might be benching 3 plates a side. That is dramatically higher stress already without even changing the volume. It's already way higher, so you're already presenting a larger stress onto your system. So if we increase volume, we are exponentially increasing the level of stress that we have to recover from. So that was the first misconception. This idea that, hey, just increase your volume. Actually, we already have factors that are increasing to cause more stress. Lifting is a very linear process. More weight, stronger, bigger, as I keep saying on this channel, right? So that was the first misconception. The second misconception is advanced guys are more capable of generating force on the muscle they're lifting. Like when I do a chest press, I feel it on the chest. Now, I'm not saying it's a mind muscle connection, touchy-feely kind of, no, you guys see me lift, I lift hard and heavy. But it affects my chest where I want it to be. If I'm doing a squat, it's going to affect my quads. If I'm doing a back exercise, I'm going to feel it in my back. So at the advanced level, you have the ability to direct that stress. So not only is the weight heavier, but you're better able to direct it to the muscle that you want to grow. It's actually a very important concept when it comes to advanced training, which I might even devote a whole video to because it's very important. So that's the second thing that they misunderstood, because they just thought, well, throw more volume at it. Actually, more weight, more internal focus already delivers hugely more stimulus. Now, the last thing, which is potentially the most important thing, what doesn't get better over the course of a lifetime? In fact, you could argue what gets worse. Take a guess. Take 5 seconds to... Well, generally speaking, what doesn't actually improve very much on a physiological cellular level is your recovery. That doesn't get better. Yeah, sure, you learn how to recover better, of course. You learn how to eat better, rest better. You learn all those things. Of course, you learn the lifestyle. But my point is, in terms of recovery mechanisms, nothing really improves. So you're getting way stronger, way more able to direct the stress. And on top of that, your recovery systems are exactly the same. So the difference between a guy who goes to the gym for the first time, benches a plate aside, and him 10 years later benching 3 plates aside, 4 sets and reps with a huge focus on the chest is just completely different. So you have to account for recovery. And again, this is a problem at the advanced level. This is one of the reasons why you get so many, usually Reddit nerds, coming into the comments like with one comment at a time going, you're wrong, it doesn't mean that. Because they're piss weak. You can do what you like when you're piss weak. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're benching 2 plates aside, who gives a shit what you think? Do what you like, it doesn't matter. But the point is, as you get more advanced, this stuff makes a big difference. So rather than do an unnecessary amount of BS, even when you're an intermediate, use the right amount of volume and then have those ideas in your mind ready for as you get more advanced. You might not get more advanced if you insist on doing all this nonsense, training too easy. So yeah, that's the thing. The actual truth is this. The level of volume that you do as you get more advanced will either stay the same or more likely go down. There's just a lot more stress on the joints and the body and everything. You've got to recover from that. If you don't recover, you're not going to grow. But yeah, you've got to factor in the stimulus to fatigue ratio of everything you're doing. I think in recent years, stimulus to fatigue ratio has been hijacked in terms of just exercise selection. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think most of you guys, if you hear stimulus to fatigue ratio, you probably think exercise, right? People saying trying to target the muscle, do higher reps, all that kind of stuff. Actually, traditionally speaking, the stimulus to fatigue ratio has been used to look at overall routines, like the level of volume in a routine, whether you can recover from that, the stimulus of the entire routine, the level of volume compared to the fatigue. So you get somebody who's doing a ton of volume with a lot of weight. That is an insane amount of fatigue. Yeah, it's an insane amount of stimulus, but it's not a good balance. Typically speaking, as you get more advanced, this is when this stuff starts to matter a lot. But yeah, really nice question to highlight to kick this Q&A off. All right, next question. Let's go with this one from Machado6377. I'll just break it down. Basically, he's asking about plant-based sources of protein relative to dairy and animal-based and all that kind of stuff. So, as per usual, the studies in nutrition are actually pretty good. All the traditional research points to this idea that you don't need to have to eat meat protein. Just to give you guys an anecdotal story, the UK is quite small, all right? When I was younger, when I was at my peak of lifting, I would be in contact with most of the top strong guys in the country. We'd all hang out together and talk online, right? Strongmen, powerlifters, Olympic lifters, all sorts, right? There were, at least back then, at least 2 or 3 guys who were fully plant-based and were absolutely jacked and massive. So in my mind, from an early age, it was just never an issue. I never even batted an eyelid at it because I could see in front of me guys who were plant-based, didn't even really talk about it, but were just huge and jacked. I remember the one guy was a strongman. He was on the national scene back in 2010. And I would say that has matched my personal experience of coaching clients who were plant-based. In fact, let me tell you one more thing. One of my strongest ever clients was plant-based. It's an Australian lad. He still watches the channel every now and again. Dylan, if you're out there, say hello. Let everyone know who you are. But plant-based, tremendously strong. We made a lot of progress together. Yeah, as I say, for me, practically speaking, I think all protein sources count. That's something where I think a lot of people get very emotional about protein sources. You know, the whole eat meat, be a man kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. I just find all that a bit silly. It's not something I grew up with, really. I do personally eat a lot more chicken and fish, but then it's just a personal preference. It's just what works for me. I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with plant-based protein. I don't personally get along with tofu and stuff like that. I've tried. I have tried. I've definitely tried. It makes sense on paper. Tofu and seitan and all that kind of stuff. It makes sense on paper. It's just, for my personal taste, it's not quite there. But I like the general idea. I am definitely sympathetic towards the reasons. Joshua Kevin Perry says, how much do you bench, bro? I have benched 400 pounds at 200 pounds. So question here from Femia.9785. Hi, congratulations. I first want to thank you for the asynchronous push-pull leg recommendations. It's fantastic. That was actually from a video that I put up on YouTube just outlining how to run a push-pull legs effectively for, I think it was like advanced guys, intermediates, beginners, a whole big setup. It's a very popular video actually. Here is my question. If I want to improve my bench press strength and have long arms, what exercises would you recommend? Sadly, I can't grip that wide because of shoulder issues. Listen, we don't do excuses on this channel. Okay? I provide solutions. I'm sympathetic towards your struggles, but we do not do excuses. I have long arms. I benched pretty decently in my career. It's not an excuse. You have to start with the assumption that your training sucks, your effort sucks, everything sucks. If you start with that assumption, you can progress. Long arms is not an excuse that I want you to start with, because that's not something you can do anything about. What you can do something about is your training, your attitude, your diet, your recovery, all that kind of stuff. So I highlighted this question because I don't like these types of questions, okay? I don't want to hear about your long arms, your long limbs. Never bothered me. I should never really have been a powerlifter. With the size of my joints, I have a physique much more suited to aesthetics than strength. I used it as an advantage. I thought maybe I'm not thickly built, but that means I can hold more muscle in a lighter weight category. I always thought to my advantage. I don't like it when people start saying, hey, long arms. Because the fact of the matter is, it's the same stuff, Femia. It's still the same stuff. So I highlighted that question specifically for that reason. I gave a lot of recommendations for increasing bench strength in the last Q&A, the part 1. So go and rewatch that. It's the first question there. But I wanted to just bring that up. We don't do excuses on this channel. We don't do excuses or power building because they're both stupid. Next, congrats coach, you deserve way more. That was from MOVWY, something like that. And also from Gordino, you deserve so many subs. Guys, thank you so much. Yeah, you guys are awesome, thank you. And hopefully you guys find the Q&A useful. Andy, my old friend Andy Fockman. Andy was one of my earliest mentors, if you guys are interested. When I was getting into lifting, Andy was already pretty jacked, and we talked on the old forums, and I learned a lot from him. He had some really good tips on overhead pressing. I think he wrote an article on overhead pressing many years ago, if he remembers that. I'm not sure if he does. But anyway, other than training experiments that you just learn from on an individual level, what are 3 or 4 time-wasting mistakes you wish you hadn't made and would steer younger lifters away from? Yeah, I think for me, overall, a large majority of it was doing too much of X. So I think we could probably say too much volume, too much intensity was definitely some mistakes I've made. I think I could have avoided quite a lot of pain and discomfort. And luckily I never had that many injuries, but I could have avoided a lot of pain by just backing off a little bit, not being in so much of a rush, you know. Ultimately speaking, for me, when I was coming up to my strongest and being at my strongest, pain was normalized. And that's what I was taught. Yeah, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna suck. Inevitably, some pain at that level is necessary. But I guess I question how much of that was just misconceptions that I learned from other people. Because ultimately, you push your body so hard, it'll break. But at the same time, you've got to push yourself, otherwise you're not going to succeed. So I think there was a balance. I think the first two I would say is maybe doing too much volume and too much intensity. Frequency was never a problem. I think frequency was always about 2 or 3 times a week, which I think is quite sensible. The other time wasting mistake I made was pushing after things which didn't really affect much. Just doing stuff which kind of felt like fun in the moment, but ultimately was less fun than if I just poured time into getting better results. Like, for example, the reason I'm so critical of yoke work and forearm work is because I did all that stuff. I made all those mistakes when I was small. I did neck training. I did a whole bunch of grip training. Trust me, I did all that stuff. I mean, yeah, at least I competed in grip competition, so there was a need, right? But I did a whole bunch of that stuff, even some like plyometrics, stuff like that. Really, all it pointed to was just me not knowing what I was doing and being confused. What I needed to do was knuckle down to a proper training routine and carry on getting bigger and stronger, which I did do a lot. Like, credit to me, I did all right in my 25 years. But fact of the matter is, I wasted time on BS which doesn't actually make a difference. Because some prick online had talked about the importance of a big neck and said, "Oh, if you don't train your neck, you're gonna be big with a small neck," which is just moronic. It's all down to genetics. Some guy left a comment in the last video saying F1 drivers have big necks and small bodies. Well, fucking obviously it's genetics. Why do you think they are in that position where they're world-class drivers? Because they've got the genetics to do that. It's the same with arm wrestlers with massive arms, massive forearms. You can't train for that. You train on a balanced routine, you get huge all over. If you end up with less than big forearms, it's just genetics. You can't change it. That's all it is. Grow as big as you can overall. So one of my biggest mistakes was caught up in all that unnecessary BS, believing this small muscle emphasis. Just get stronger overall. All right. Yeah, I think that's about it, Andy. All right. Right, Carl Andrews. So he's got a long question here. I highlighted this question because Carl dropped about 3 or 4 questions all along similar lines. Now, Carl, from what my understanding is a relatively new lifter. So he's new to the industry, he's new to lifting as a whole, new to the gym himself personally. He's talking about a lot of very granular details, like having a exercise for the rear part of the side delt, having one tricep lagging behind the other, needing to train the neck. So all these like super granular details. And I highlighted this question because it's a great example of somebody who's come into the industry and is just overwhelmed with what he should do. So in the end, he tries to do everything. And in doing everything, more than likely, he's going to accomplish absolutely nothing. In the grand scheme. Yeah, he's going to get some results, but in the grand scheme, that's not how you develop a great physique, by doing everything. What this guy needs to do, and anybody who's coming into the industry, coming into physique development, is to do as I always preach on this channel. Get stronger. So progressive poundages in good standardized form for a reasonable rep range. Now you want to do that on the big basics. The amount of distractions that are in Carl's brain at the moment, and I'm getting a small insight. You've seen that iceberg meme, where you get a bit on the top. I'm getting a small insight of all the things going on in his brain from the last 4 or 5 comments he's dropped on this video. And that's just a small insight. Like, the overthinking that's actually going on must be insane. So some of that may be like a personality, psychological issue, which I can't do anything about. But if you are just a beginner who feels overwhelmed or feels like you should be doing all this kind of stuff, back away. Okay. Those people who are talking about imbalances, neck work, high rep pull-ups, calisthenics, all that stuff you were asking about, they don't want what's best for you. They're just trying to create a level of importance in things which aren't important. I mean, that's the algorithm summed up in a nutshell. Yeah, just people's aha moments, like, if I do that, that's the key. Yes, I need an exercise for the rear part of my side delts on the left hand side. That's the key. That's why I still look like a noob. No, it isn't. You look like a noob because you're small. You're weak. You haven't put the time in on the basics. So I highlighted this question, Carl, because step back, brother. Pull back. Step back. Recenter yourself. Notice how I never talk favorably about this kind of bullshit, because it's not something you need to focus on. Right, so Nicholas McDonald 4117 says, my question is, when reverse dieting out of a cut, how often should you be adding back in calories? Should you go off the scale or add calories, say, every 2 weeks? So I think, first of all, reverse dieting is not really a thing, despite what Lane Norton might say. I think, first of all, I would generally recommend 2 weeks roughly at maintenance after you finished a cut, assuming it was a reasonable cut where you change the look of your physique, right? I would recommend that because it takes a little bit of time to reduce the hunger signals, to get some of the hormonal processes back to normal. So you need a couple of weeks just to get everything back to scratch. Now, at that stage, that's when you would look at your options. Look at whether you're going to recomp, bulk, maybe even cut again, and what the options on the table are. I like the 2 week maintenance period. Okay, it helps physically in the ways that I've said, but also you can actually make progress in those 2 weeks. So it highlights the importance of good, effective training. Like, yeah, sure, good calories, a lot of protein is important, but some of you, depending on the body fat you're at, you may not need to go back into a bulk. You may not want to, really. You may just do it because you're like, kind of got to do it. Yeah, but listen, if you're already a reasonable body weight, say you're 200 pounds, okay, and you ended the cut still about 20%, which is not an uncommon situation for the average regular Joe. It's pretty normal, actually. Most guys who get down to 20%, well, by the average person on the street standards, they're lean. 20%, a genuine 20%, is actually what the average person will consider to be a skinny, regular person. 10 to 20% is like real bodybuilding levels. So, make no mistake, like 20% is actually lean. So if you end your cut and you get down to 20%, you're nowhere near 10%. So you've got plenty of room just to recomp if you wanted to. There's still going to be plenty of food. That's when I would make the decision of go, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to recomp? Do I want to bulk? Do I want to carry on cutting? But yeah, take a 2 week maintenance period and then see where you go from there. Now, in terms of if you are going to bulk, when to add calories, you'd add calories based on how your body weight moves. So 2 weeks, you aim to keep your body weight still, maybe maximum couple of kilos because of glycogen and water and all that stuff. Okay, that's about it. For the average size person, that's about right. Now at that stage, that's when you want to respond to how your body is shaping up. You want to respond to the level of weight gain. For a reasonable gain, you're looking at about 1% of body weight per month, I think is about right. It's like a couple of pounds for the average person. For a female, smaller female, maybe a pound. And then add in your calories to keep that in the right place. Also, sporadically, you want to check your body fat. But again, if you're in a bulk and your body fat's getting out of control, you need to reevaluate why you're bulking. Is it worthwhile? You may just be better off recomping, eating plenty of food, and just, if it's enough to gain strength in the gym, then you're doing enough. Okay. Right. Jordan Jacobs 157 says, what are the most common reasons why intermediates struggle to make expected progression in their training? So I think this varies based on the era. Like when I was a kid, it was different. Nobody was overtraining when I was a kid. There was a lot of ego lifting when I was a kid. A lot of people just training with really bad form, just getting as much weight on the bar as possible. And that's why they weren't progressing. I think over the last 10 years or so, there's been a large high volume kind of arc, particularly in our community, in evidence-based online, Instagram community. There's been a large volume bias. And I think nowadays, it's probably more that they're doing too much volume, which is having a knock-on effect on everything else. Like I said earlier, high volume for advanced guys is dangerous because typically advanced guys are going to push themselves no matter what. So you have a situation where volume's high, intensity's high, you're going to get hurt. Now, When it comes to intermediates, they might not necessarily know how to push themselves and they're not using that much weight. So very often what happens with intermediates is they end up doing too much volume, and as a result, their intensity sucks. Because they're still tired at the end of the session, at the end of the week, they're exhausted. But they're exhausted not because they've worked hard per set, but because they've done a bunch of junk volume. But they categorize that as going, oh, well, I'm working hard. I'm doing my 10 to 20 sets because apparently 10 sets is the floor, 20 sets for gains. In fact, I even increased my volume. I'm doing 24 sets, but I'm still not gaining because as the volume goes up, naturally, your intensity will go down. And the reverse is true as well. As your volume goes down, your intensity will go up. Now, obviously, there's a balance. You can't just do like one set, but there's a balance. What I'm saying is, in this day and age, that is a large part of it. Intensity is piss poor. Now, that could be as a result or not as a result of volume, but sometimes volume is associated with that as well. In terms of other reasons, now this is on the other side of the fence. So, you got one side, the overworkers. They do way too much volume, so their intensity is piss poor. Their balance is all screwed up. But on the other side, you might have the other type of person who's just very inconsistent. Yeah. So misses weeks from the gym, misses days. I run into these types less often because guys who I speak to are generally relatively serious about what they're doing. So the guys I speak to, they don't have too much of a problem with getting to the gym 2 to 4 times a week, right? Which is fine. But yeah, there are a group of people out there who really struggle. Usually it's a result of just personal problems. Either they're very sporadic across the year, or they're really good for a while and then they take 2 months off. So they get nowhere. So that is definitely that kind of person. I personally run into that kind of person a lot less for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe in other communities with other YouTubers, they have those more often. I guess I don't give off those vibes because people know my background. They know I'm a coach. They know I'm an ex-competitor as well. So that's maybe not the kind of person I attract to my audience. I tend to attract guys who are a bit more serious. But yeah, that would be another reason why. I think those are the big reasons, really, to be honest. One more reason, distractions. I think distractions, probably the big one. Distractions leading to program hopping, probably a big one. Program hopping, I've covered on this channel so many times, I won't cover it again, but I would say that's quite a big problem amongst intermediates. And distractions go along with it. Hey, maybe I should do neck training, and this and that and whatever else, and it just ends up being differences. Even to the point where people are changing rep schemes. What's the best rep scheme, Faz? Should I do your enforced RAR? Should I do dynamic double progression? Doesn't matter, bro. Just pick one. This agonizing over rep schemes is just the same dysfunction as agonizing over routines. It's the same thing. Just pick one. Stick to it. Get stronger. You don't need a magic formula. All right. Next question. Chad AV69 has a question. Okay, so I highlighted this question. You guys can read it. I highlighted this question because what I wanted to say to Chad, who is, I don't think he's a beginner, but I don't think he's had a great deal of success in the gym. What I wanted to say to Chad is, this is a bit of a lesson on humility that I talked about in the last video. I had to show a lot of humility to my first coach because I thought I was really good. I was not. Yeah. Now, Chad, I followed you for a couple of months. You've dropped some comments on, originally it was the protein video, and you've dropped some other comments. Initially, you were actually quite argumentative. Do you remember that? And which is fine. I don't mind that. It's fun. And so then you got around to my way of thinking about the protein and a few other things. What I will say, Chad, is my message to you is, with respect, you are exactly the kind of guy who would respond well to either a consultation or coaching because you don't know what you're doing. And I'm saying that with love and respect. You haven't got a fucking clue. All of your questions here point to somebody who is so insanely confused. Your lack of results is a knowledge gap. You just need someone to put you in the right direction. And I think it's very important to be humble about that realization. I'm not putting you down. So don't get upset in the comments, okay? I'm not putting you down. I'm saying that with love. But you are precisely the kind of person who respond very well to coaching or a consultation because you do not know what you're doing at all. Your entire thought process around training and diet is all upside down. It's all wrong. And questions like this really highlight why that is. So I'm not calling you out. It's an anonymous name, right? Nobody knows who you are. I don't know who you are. So I'm not calling you out. But I'm just saying, as this is a great example, I cannot give you the direction you need in the YouTube comments. I need to sit down with you for an hour in a consultation or coach you for many months to put you on the right track. Because right now, you're completely lost. Okay? Right, love, brother. I appreciate you. Don't take it the wrong way. Alistair Pierce, 8278 says, fasting, exclamation mark. I'm planning to copy your 24-hour alternating day fasting. Do you do it during deep cuts when you're very lean? Okay, so for background, I did alternate day fasting for a while. I've done it sporadically. It's one of my preferred ways of fasting. I like it. Now, in terms of doing it when you're very lean, no. It's a lot more difficult to do fasting when you're lean. Okay, that's what I found anyway. Some guys might have a different experience. I'm relatively lean now and I did fast yesterday, but yeah, it's harder and harder the leaner you get. So it's not a strategy which I would recommend if you're getting down to contest shape. If you're just looking for a regular cut, then sure, why not? If you're 25% body fat, great, do it. Even if you're 20%, do it. I think anything up to about 15-ish. But again, don't get hung up on the numbers. That's going to vary dramatically based on your propensity to be lean. Like I don't naturally cope well with being that lean. So this is actually a first for me right now. But you have to figure that out for yourself. So generally speaking, although it's individual, the leaner you get, the harder fasting is going to feel. Just what I've seen, my personal experience. Others might disagree. I do know there's a couple of guys in the industry who do fasting when they're a lot leaner. Good for them. Me personally though, like I was always very overweight. My body does start to shake and struggle when I get very lean. I'm doing a good job right now, but I'm telling you, it does get difficult for me. So at a certain point, you will feel it. I think at a certain point, everyone will feel it. It's just maybe that point is different for different people. So for now, keep going. The only reason I bring that up is you said deep cut. Deep cut to me suggests a big cut, a lot of weight loss, getting very lean. At that point, fasting might be more difficult, particularly 24-hour alternating fasting. You know, maybe shorter fast would be more tolerable. Bottom line, just be cognizant of your body's feedback. That's all. If you're starting to get very hungry and you're starting to get like bingey, it's time to pull back. Angry Goldfish says, how important is it to pick exercises that drive others up? Example, J presses for bench press versus a push down. In terms of importance, at a scale of say 1 to 10, 10 being very, very important, 1 being almost not important at all. I would say for the average person, I would put that on a 0. Yeah. Average person does not need to do that at all. This is another Westside throwback. At the level that most of you are at, and me as well right now, you don't need exercise to build up other exercises. That is part of a system of training, which is the conjugate system. And so yeah, what you're asking here is, how important is it? 0 importance. If you're a bodybuilder, no importance at all. No importance. You're not interested in that at all. If you're a bodybuilder, if you're interested in physique development, just pick exercises which you can train the muscles you want to grow. KGC0609. When assessing training frequency per muscle group, how would you define effective stimulus for muscle groups which are often engaged as secondary movers? I highlighted this as a very, very good question because this is a topic which is relevant to very advanced guys. Now, this is important. Maybe even not just for the completely advanced guys, but also for the intermediates as well. If you're in that range, just listen up because this is important. You need to be aware of the effect that exercises have on the muscles that are being affected. So if I'm doing a bench press, but I use a closer grip with elbows tucked, I need to be cognizant of the effect that has on my body because more than likely that will hit my triceps very, very hard. let's expand that example. If I'm a fully tricep dominant lifter and every press that I do, every one, is with elbows a bit more tucked than I would like, what that probably means is that my triceps are going to be cooked by the end of the week. In fact, I might need very little tricep work. Now, if I ignore all that and I just say, well, I've got to do 10, 20 sets because Mike Israel told me so, I'm going to have 10 sets extra for the triceps on top of potentially an additional 10 sets from the chest and maybe even additional 10 sets for the shoulders, which is 30 sets for the triceps, which is insane. You have to be aware of how this stuff affects you. It's also another issue that I have with overhead pressing and chest pressing, which a lot of power builders get their panties in a twist because they lack the brain cells to acknowledge other points of views. But the fact of the matter is, if you're doing 8 sets of overhead pressing, 8 sets of bench pressing, that is 16 sets on the elbows, on the shoulders, which you need to account for. And if you're doing some close grip bench pressing as well, that might be another 8 sets. So all of a sudden, you've got 24 sets affecting the elbows and the shoulders, which you need to account for. So yeah, extremely important. So the reason that I've just mentioned is because you have to be cognizant of the overlap. The second reason is you also have to provide a balanced growth stimulus. So again, if I was that tricep dominant lifter, I have to force myself in positions where my chest is going to get work. Otherwise, the consequence is sore elbows, lagging chest. That doesn't sound good, does it? And obviously the sore elbows in the end will also further prevent your chest from growing because of a knock-on effect in terms of the training. For both those reasons, for the sake of overtraining some areas and undertraining others, you have to be aware of what's going on. You have to think about these things. A routine that I do might have a completely different effect on you in terms of the volume load for your muscles because your body type and your leverages are different to mine. Okay. Reese Kenny -BP7LC. How has being jacked directly impacted your life, women, physical confrontations, or does it just mean you're super good at moving furniture? Physical confrontations, I've had very few in my life. The last large fight I had, I was at university. So it was probably, close to 25 years ago. We got into an altercation outside of the nightclub. So 3 of us, me, my best friend, his brother. Now we came out of the nightclub probably 1 or 2 o'clock, and my friend's brother saw some guy on the other side of the street hitting his girlfriend. So he ran over, pulled him apart. I mean, I think that kind of stuff is risky, you know, because you never know, the girl might turn around and blame you, right? But anyway, it happened. So obviously my best friend got involved because that's his brother. Obviously I had to get involved, and that turned into like a big street brawl where it was about 6 of them, 3 of us. Police ended up getting called, and that was it. But I was fine. Nobody really went for me because if you're in a street brawl and you've got me standing there versus my friend who was quite skinny and his friend who was skinny and short, well, they're going to get it. So in that case, it helped, I guess, because I didn't really get any aggro. I was on the offensive in that particular situation. I wasn't on the receiving end, without going into too much. So yeah, in terms of later in life, nobody really bothers. If you're a big guy on a night out, nobody looks at you any other way because there are far easier targets. So I think that's probably the case. It's not something I have to consciously think about. It's not something I've ever had to consciously think about. In my adult life, I've always been big, so I've never felt in any way threatened in any situation ever. And I realise that must be quite different to some people's experience, but that's just how my life has been shaped because I have been a big dude since I was about 17, 18. In terms of women, I'd say this for women and for physical confrontations. I don't know how much of it is your look and how much of it is actually the side effect of you being more confident. So I've never struggled to hook up with women. I've pretty much had a girlfriend since I was 17, 18. I've never really been long periods of time without having a woman. But I don't know how much of that is my physique. I think it's more your confidence you exude. I mean, when I was a single guy, when I was out in a town, I'm quite happy to talk to people. I've never had any anxiety around women. That's all. From a young age, never really been an issue for me. I've always had a lot of female friends as well. Yeah, it's just not something that I've ever had any anxiety over, and I guess that probably rubs off. Good at moving furniture though? No, I don't like that at all. I hire somebody to move my furniture. Right, next question, and I think this is the final one. Leon, is science-based content more like dogmatic-based? Well, listen, I highlighted this question because I want to just point out again, we have to be very careful. So Leon, I want you to be very careful with how you word things. You, Leon, are not anti-science. I know, by the way, I know he's not because I know him from Instagram. Leon, you're not anti-science. I think we all need to be very careful with our wording from now on, okay? None of us are anti-science because the fact of the matter is the fields of exercise science, physiology, biomechanics are all sound. They're all sensible and sound. What you should say you're against is the hypertrophy research Instagram celebrities. That little bucket of bullshit is what we need to be clear that we are saying no to. Because as soon as you say, is science-based content more dogmatic, what you're doing is you're playing into the hands of the advertising. That's what they want you to say. Because then they can say, look at him, he's anti-science. He's like he's a flat earther. You're not any of those things. You're pro-science. You're just anti-bullshit. Something that I wanted to say for all of my audience now, be very savvy. Like we are in this no matter whether you want to be or not. We are in this. We are being gaslighted whether you want it or not. So choose your words very carefully. None of my audience is anti-science as a whole. Science is fantastic. Yeah, it teaches us a lot. It tells us a lot about what we're doing. Exercise science has been a field for over 100 years. 100 years. It's solid. Physiology, biomechanics, solid. This little bucket of bullshit is what we're against. Make sure you are clear on that. Okay? Because otherwise you're doing yourself a disservice. Right, folks, I'm going to call it there. Have a great week. It'll be regular videos next week. I have a bunch of topics that I want to cover. I want to talk a bit about how to break through plateaus and how to identify plateaus, which I think will be useful for you guys. But anyway, that'll be next week, and I'll bid you adieu for now. Hope you find that useful. That was a long one.